the crazy history of crackships. The internet moves at a whirlwind pace nowadays. One day people are screaming skippity toilet, and the next it's 6-7. But the latest trend to take social media by storm isn't a catchphrase or a dance, it's a relationship. And not just any relationship. If you've been anywhere online lately, then you've probably seen the bizarre mashup of two childhood icons, Rodrick Heffley from Diary of a Wimpy Kid and Regina George from Mean Girls. The pairing has spread like wildfire, inspiring countless fan edits, illustrations, and even Halloween costumes that have positioned the two unrelated characters as a couple. But this isn't the first time the internet has fallen in love with an impossible relationship. And Rodgina is just another great example of the chaos and creativity that's been fueling fandom culture for decades. Today we're going to be taking a look at the weird and wonderful world of fandom pairings, from the crossover craziness on Tumblr that led to the rise of the brave tangled dragons, to the modern crackships we're seeing play out on TikTok with Rodrick and Regina. Let's get into it. People have always been really passionate about their favorite things, and even more passionate about sharing that love with others. And at its core, fandom is about building that sense of camaraderie. Fandoms have existed long before the internet, and as early as the 1800s, we were seeing zealous communities dedicated to baseball, Jane Austen, Frank Luntz, and Sherlock Holmes. As media became more accessible at the turn of the century, fandoms continued to grow, with an assortment of music, comics, and movies inspiring widespread discussion and creativity. The rise of the internet allowed like-minded individuals to engage with one another on a global scale, and this helped foster an even stronger sense of community. Initially, fans flocked to independent websites and message boards, but as social networks became more common, they moved, first to LiveJournal, then to MySpace, then to Tumblr. This created an intricate digital ecosystem where millions of people gathered to discuss their favorite shows, books, and artists, and share their theories, artwork, and of course, ships. In the early days of the internet, there wasn't much room for fandom overlap, like a website would be dedicated to Star Trek and only Star Trek. But on these newer platforms, Tumblr especially, you could talk about any and all of your interests in a single place, not to mention, interact with a wider variety of people. Like any form of cultural exchange, this led to a unique fusion of fandoms, which evolved into the organic development of crossover concepts. At the time, one of the biggest fandoms in the world was Harry Potter, and fans of the franchise were often drawn to other youth-focused fantasy series like The Hunger Games, Divergent, The Mortal Instruments, Percy Jackson, Maze Runner, and The Chronicles of Narnia. While each of these works had their own individual fandoms that were wildly passionate about them, the similarities in their themes and tropes also made them perfect for crossovers, and it was pretty common to see imagined scenarios where Percy Jackson attended Hogwarts or Katniss Everdeen teamed up with Beatrice Pryor. Now, crossovers weren't an unheard of concept, especially in the TV space, as seen with Scooby-Doo and Batman in 1972, The Jetsons and the Flintstones in 1987, and Full House and Family Matters in 1991. But on Tumblr, they took on a life of their own, something that I partially credit to the popularity of crossover episodes in the 2000s and 2010s, like That's So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana, The Jimmy Timmy Power Hour, and iParty with Victorious. Projects that many of the same people writing Twilight and the Mortal Instrument crossover fanfics would have grown up watching. Crossovers were solidified in the mainstream in 2011 with Once Upon a Time, which took dozens of unrelated Disney characters and paired them up to create the most complicated family tree that even the wildest Tumblr user couldn't have dreamt up. In the traditional sense, a crack pairing refers to a relationship in-universe that is so absurd it could never happen canonically. Think Dudley Dursley and Hermione Granger, Gollum and Galadriel, Darcy Lewis and Groot. It should be so out of left field that you find yourself struggling to even take it seriously, but that's part of its charm. And in the early days of Tumblr fandom, there were a lot of people who went out of their way to create chaotic crackships. In 2012, a new crossover took over the internet, the Big Four, or more widely remembered as Rise of the Brave Tangled Dragons. Similar to Super Wholock, which focused on the TV shows Supernatural, Doctor Who, and Sherlock, the Big Four was a fandom fusion dedicated to the animated films Rise of the Guardians, Brave, Tangled, and How to Train Your Dragon. Although each movie had developed its own fandom independently, the fact that the main characters had similar ages and art styles gave them the same sort of crossover appeal that the YA franchises had. It didn't matter that they were made by entirely different studios. To fans, this impossibility only made the concept even more exciting. The fandom quickly grew, and thousands of edits, fanfics, and illustrations were flooding the internet. Sometimes the quartet were Hogwarts students, sometimes superheroes, other times modern-day teens. Like most crackships, fans weren't limiting themselves to the canon, and instead used the characters as familiar placeholders for their own original ideas. While the characters were shipped together pretty interchangeably in those early days, the most popular pairings were Jack Frost and Rapunzel, followed by Merida and Hiccup. After Frozen was released in late 2013, Elsa and Anna were added to the lineup, leading to the fandom being renamed Rise of the Brave Tangled Frozen Dragons. A mouthful, I know. Because of their similar visuals and powers, Elsa and Jack Frost became the new it couple, something that was memed pretty extensively across the internet. But the fandom didn't ignore the rest of the group, usually hitching Anna to Hiccup and Rapunzel to Merida. And for some people, these pairings were their first introduction to crossovers and crackships, probably because the source material was more approachable for younger demographics. The fandom just spiraled from there, introducing other animated characters like Mavis and Moana, and while some of these pairings came from a genuine place, others were just a joke. Because of the nature of crackships and crossovers, the sky is the limit, and over the years we've seen some truly bizarre pairings. Shrek and Shadow, Katara and Sasuke, Yoda and Elphaba, Wonder Woman and Lara Croft, The Grinch and Tony Tiger. And crackshipping isn't limited to fictional characters either, as seen with the popularity of Barack Obama x Harry Styles, a joke ship that started on Tumblr back in 2014 and became so widespread that mainstream news outlets couldn't help but talk about it.
You had a sexual relationship with Barack Obama.
Legally not allowed to say.
Most of the time, crossover pairings are just for shits and gigs, but the best ones in my opinion strike a balance, with the characters having just enough compatibility that it makes sense, but still being absurd enough that you can just have fun with it. In the 2020s, TikTok and X have become the main fandom platforms, but large-scale crossovers like Rise of the Brave Tangled Dragons seems to have gone the way of BuzzFeed and skinny jeans, until recently that is. On October 10th, 2025, artist Monia Lin posted a TikTok pairing Regina George from Mean Girls with Rodrick Heffley from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. The video quickly picked up steam, and in mere days there were hundreds of fan edits, art pieces, and thirst posts dedicated to the fictional couple, signaling a return of the fandom dynamic we'd long thought lost. There are several reasons why I think the pairing has struck a chord with so many people. First is the nostalgia factor. Mean Girls came out in 2004 and was a staple of the era, and its popularity endured for so long that it got a sequel, a Broadway musical, and a movie adaptation of said musical. While perhaps not quite as much of a pop culture phenomenon, The Diary of a Wimpy Kid was a mainstay of scholastic book fairs in the late 2000s, eventually garnering a live-action film series from 2010 to 2012 and an animated reboot that started in 2021. We don't talk about the 2017 movie. Because both franchises have been around for roughly 20 years, odds are you're probably familiar with them to some degree, which makes constructing an imagined narrative way easier, because you can just fill in the blanks yourself. Another reason why people might be so drawn to Rodgina is because of its trope potential, like the girly girl and the bad boy, the popular cheerleader and the artistic loser, the black cat and the golden retriever, and throw in secret dating and enemies to lovers for good measure. These are the sorts of plot lines we've seen play out in dozens of movies, TV shows, and music videos over the years, but I eat it up every single time. The ship also benefits from its adherence to the character's canon. In Regina's case, Rodrick is basically a grungier version of Aaron Samuels, and if you take a good look at her bedroom, she has posters of Avril Lavigne and The Strokes, so you could make the argument that she'd like Loaded Diaper. Meanwhile, Rodrick's crush in Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Heather Hills, is basically a less evil version of Regina, and I think he would absolutely love being bossed around by her in public. Pairings are always a hot-button issue in a fandom, and Rodgina is already seeing its fair share of criticism. Some have said that because of the characters' ages, fan art and fanfic depicting them in sexual situations is inappropriate. While I can somewhat understand the argument in Rodrick's case, considering his franchise is firmly in PG territory, Regina is very open about her sexuality. And honestly, sexual exploration is a very normal part of adolescence, and it's naive to pretend otherwise. I've also seen people say that the pairing doesn't work because the characters' actors have a 15-year age gap and they went to high school at totally different times. But that just feels like a total misunderstanding of how crossovers and fanfiction work. The argument that's gotten the most traction online is that by pairing Regina with Rodrick, people are erasing her queer identity. Ever since Mean Girls came out, fans have theorized that both Regina and Janice are actually lesbians, which is why they have such a volatile relationship with each other. And over the years, there's been a lot of fan art and fanfic dedicated to this headcanon. Fandoms are notorious for interpreting subtext as romance, with the likes of Spock and Kirk, Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy, and Derek and Styles. But I think it's important to remember that in the original movie, neither Regina or Janice actually express an interest in women. I mean, Janice literally starts dating Kevin Napor at the end of the movie. Now, I acknowledge that subsequent media has complicated things a bit, since Renee Rapp has played Regina as a lesbian, and they've made Janice canonically queer. But as far as cross-ships are concerned, that doesn't actually matter, because at the end of the day, it's just a way for people to explore different relationship dynamics with characters they know and love. And I don't think it's fair to reduce Rodgina to a gender-swapped version of Reginis. The popularity of Rodrick x Regina has resulted in an uptick of other crackships and cross-pairings online, like Clark Kent and Sharpay Evans, Duke Orsino and Olive Pendergast, Gretchen Wieners and Joey Donner, and Cher Horowitz and Billy Loomis. I've even seen Jasper Cullen and Coriolanus Snow, a ship that I'm genuinely surprised wasn't around back in 2014, because it's brilliant. While most of these modern pairings are just riding Rodrina's coattails, and aren't intended to go further than that, it's interesting to see what ships people think would and wouldn't work, especially in this day and age where generative AI is taking the life and soul out of art, and this sort of creative expression is becoming less and less common. Teen media today totally pales in comparison to the past, and movies like She's the Man, A Cinderella Story, Clueless, and Bring It On just don't get made anymore. Sure, they could be silly and predictable, but they were also fun and filled with heart. And I think audiences are desperate for those sorts of stories to make a comeback. Rodgina scratches that itch, and when people pair these characters together, what they're really doing is resurrecting that era. They're channeling the fun, colorful, and camp energy that made teen films of the past legendary. And if I were Hollywood, I'd pay attention. This wouldn't be the first time a niche corner of the fandom world has made its way into the mainstream. 50 Shades of Grey began as Twilight fanfiction, After was a One Direction Wattpad story, and The Love Hypothesis was someone's fevered Raylo dreams. Would it really be so far-fetched for a TikTok trend to influence the next era of teen movies? Now, it's hard to predict how long our fascination with Rodrick and Regina will last. Maybe it'll fizzle out in a few weeks, maybe it'll become the stuff of legend. But at least we can remember that time we were able to come together and ask, what if and why not? So whether you're shipping Rodrick and Regina, Elsa and Jack Frost, or Barack Obama and Harry Styles, just know that you're not alone. You're a part of an ancient fandom tradition, and someone, somewhere, will love the same crazy couple that you do. What are some of your favorite crackships? I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye!